Cyclone Alfred has lost its pace but not its punch. The storm is now expected to cross the southeast Queensland coast in the early hours of Saturday. Its force is already well and truly being felt, with huge waves pummelling the Gold Coast and anyone risking going into the ocean or even onto the beach. Brisbane's streets have been quiet today as residents prepared for Alfred's arrival. Across the border, emergency evacuation warnings have been issued for parts of the Northern Rivers region as the storm approaches. Reporter Mark Willesee begins our coverage in Brisbane.
The Category 2 system may have slowed, but Cyclone Alfred is not losing its punch. Surging surf on the Gold Coast, wiping out anyone reckless enough to put themselves or their cars in their path. Record-breaking waves have already been clocked, one over 12 metres high.
No way!
The already slow-moving system doubled back momentarily last night, delaying its arrival.
What we've seen overnight in terms of the erratic movement of the system reiterates the fact that this is an evolving situation.
It's now forecast to cross Queensland's coast as late as Saturday morning. Coastal islands like Stradbroke and Moreton will be hit first, and they're already feeling Alfred's long reach.
The wind has intensified. We've had gusts over the last 24 hours, but now it feels really constant.
Brisbane was calm this morning, with plenty of people making the most of the unexpected fine weather.
Well, I did my last walk yesterday thinking this was not going to be available, so it was a surprise this morning when you saw blue sky.
Feels like Christmas. There's not many people on the roads, but the weather's perfect, so...
The CBD was a ghost town, as many followed the advice to stay home.
It just seems to be taking so long to get here.
All you're hearing is Alfred, Alfred, Alfred. It's kind of like COVID, and you just kind of want it to move on and we can deal with it.
Airports made the call to close, the last flights in or out this afternoon, ahead of expected strong winds and intense rain.
This is significant rainfall that won't only cause flash flooding in the areas that, of the most impacted areas, but prolonged riverine flooding, and it's important that we are now preparing.
On the shores of Moreton Bay, hundreds of homes are at serious risk of inundation.
This place, when it gets heavy rain, it's come in before, so we're expecting it to be even worse.
We are going to cop it. It's just a matter of how bad.
The wind is really starting to pick up now at Brisbane's Moreton Bay, and if we swing around here, you can see that just 30 metres from this shoreline is a facility housing this community's most vulnerable. There are 80 nursing home residents there, and speaking to the people who run this facility, they say at this stage there is no plan to evacuate the residents. Health authorities insist it's not predicted to flood and is safe for both patients and staff.
Wherever possible, you don't want to move elderly people wherever it's safe to do so. So often it's a case of, can we get them to a higher level? Are we able to have power in place in case there's vulnerabilities with some of their generation at flood levels?
Late this afternoon, conditions took a turn. Just the beginning of what Cyclone Alfred will bring. Mark Willesee, ABC News, Brisbane.
And people have been ordered to leave 16 areas in northern New South Wales before 9 p.m. tonight because of potential flooding. It includes thousands of households in parts of Lismore, Kyogle and Coraki.
Alfred isn't here yet, but is already causing havoc. Water police search rough seas off Tweed Heads for a missing jet skier before finding out it was a false alarm. Tonight it's feared there could be more rescue missions to come.
The weather is deteriorating rapidly for us. Whilst it may look like the rivers aren't flooding, there is high concern that they will start to flood overnight.
The SES urging residents in parts of northern New South Wales to get out before 9 o'clock tonight. Some had already decided to leave. Patricia McDonald was trapped in floodwaters 3 years ago.
We were up to our neck in water and had to be rescued by one of the tinnies.
The Lismore woman and her grandson this afternoon got ready to make a quick exit.
I've got all my stuff packed in my car pretty much.
A delay in the timing of the crossing of the cyclone across landfall does not mean less impact.
In fact, it could mean even more rain.
Alfred is behaving at the moment like a completely unwanted house guest. It's told us that it's going to be late, but linger even longer.
Dorrigo in the northern tablelands has already received a drenching.
I went out to check the rain gauge this morning and I had 226 mil in it, which is more rain than had been forecast for the whole event.
These houses in Lismore have been vacant since the devastating floods of 2022 after being bought back by the state government. Today, the Premier confirmed a new round of support has been locked in for people in this region after the federal government agreed to fast-track disaster assistance for 15 of the state's local government areas. Everyone hopes they won't need that help.
A little bit anxious, a bit apprehensive because you just don't know exactly what to expect.
We do know the cyclone is coming, but not how hard it will hit. Fiona Willan, ABC News.
We have Laura Lavelle in Brisbane and Sean Tarek Goodwin in Ballina in northern New South Wales. Laura, to you first. So how's the situation in Brisbane with the expectation that Alfred is likely to be crossing the coast there in a little over 24 hours?
Well, Joe, as you can imagine, it's looking very different than we anticipated. We thought by now we'd be talking about a tropical cyclone a few mere hours away from making impact, but as you know, it's stalled. As you can see behind me here at the moment, it's overcast at the moment, a few grey skies. The rain's been off and on again, but fairly light all day, and the winds have picked up just slightly. Of course, a very different story at the Gold Coast that's really bearing the brunt of the system's conditions there. But from where I'm standing here in Brisbane, you'd never really guess what was brewing just off the coast. But that doesn't mean that people have become complacent. Residents have spent the day preparing. They're gearing up to bunker down, feeling anxious and nervous, but ready to weather whatever is to come.
OK, let's go to Sean Tarek Goodwin now, our reporter over the border in northern New South Wales. Sean, g'day. So we heard a little earlier on that the highest wind registrations for the day were around that Byron area, about 100 k's an hour. And the biggest rainfall so far has been in New South Wales as well, in that Dorrigo region. And Ballina there, you're pretty close to the coast. What's it like?
Oh, Joe, it's getting pretty windy already here. There are warnings locally of wind gusts of over 130 kilometres an hour here in Ballina, and that's starting to already bring down power lines in this area and right along the north coast. As we go to air, about 10,000 homes in that region are currently without power. And many communities have also recently been issued with an order to evacuate by 9 p.m. tonight. Here in Ballina, this is one of the communities that's been asked to prepare to evacuate. And that order covers most of the Ballina CBD and surrounds, which is flanked by the Richmond River. And authorities are concerned that the amount of water that will be flowing through that river will be met by a storm surge, or could be met by a storm surge, pushing water inland from sea, catching communities like Ballina in the middle. The State Emergency Service has set up evacuation centres, and it's urging people to consider relocating and not waiting around to find out what the impacts could be.